what has been shown to over and over and over, what personality profiles have been shown over and over to have naturally higher proclivity for the natural characteristics that you need in a small business. Dominant choleric personality and a cautious thinker. Those are the two. And from my personal experience, that is exactly what I've experienced. And I'll just share with you some examples. Besides going too deep in any category, let me just give you some monikers with each one just to help you kind of just keep track of what we're talking about. So if we talk about the sanguine personality or the interrelator, you can think of that person as the life of the party. They want to be liked. That's the chatty Cathy. Chatty Cathy. That's the life of the party. Now, the dominant, they want control. They want control. Those are the people that are offensive and abrasive typically and will bowl you over and run you down. Okay? A common moniker for that might be the asshole. Those are the people that will offend you. They don't offend you knowingly. It's just part of who they are. Another personality is the steady relator. And that person is what they care about is security. They need a lot of reinforcement, and security is very important for the steady relator, or what is called the phlegmatic personality. Then you go over into the cautious thinker or the melancholy personality. That's the person who's very detail oriented. They're very detailed and they want to be right. What's important to them is being right. Now, I just gave you just a real basic outline of 4 core components. Now, let me say there's a lot to this, and I'm going to make it very simple and small, but let me do that. Let me make it very simple and small. First of all, each person has multiple personalities. You're not just one or the other. It's very rare that you peak at only one category, and all other categories are very low. Number one. Number two, whatever you have that's positive in any of those categories, you have the same amount that's the opposite. Now, this is very important because when I talk to and train doctors, and you need to know this when you're training staff, and I totally recommend you teach your staff this. It will help them. It'll help them be better. It'll help them to understand themselves. It'll help them to understand who they're with in their relationships and the business relationships and the staffing of the office, the dynamics of the office. I mean, if you don't understand this, you can really mess up the dynamics in your office. Go ahead and hire 3 cholerics and put them all in your office, and let them have crossover responsibilities. Or do the opposite: hire 3 phlegmatics and have them all in crossover responsibilities. You're gonna have total chaos. So what happens is everybody has different personalities. Number one. Number two is you do whatever you like about yourself. There's going to be parts of it that you're not going to like, and you will get defensive when we cover this with you, and I cover this with you. You will get defensive. You will not want to. I'll give you an example. All the doctors I'd have do personality profiles. And I told them, I said, you're going to have to read this 3 times. See, when you read it and you read all the good things, you're like, yeah, that's me. That's me. Yeah, game on. You don't have any trouble reading good things about yourself. And so when you read the bad things is when you go into denial. You go, that's not me. That's not me. That's not me. You'll go into denial with all the negative parts of your personality. And so I used to tell the doctors, you're going to have to read this 3 times. The first time, you're going to like the good stuff and you're going to deny the bad stuff. Then you're going to have to settle on it and read it again. And you'll absorb it and you go, well, that's kind of true. And then you have to settle on it. And then the third time you read it, you'll have to go, damn, that profile was right on the money. Even though I don't want to admit these negative things, it's right on the money. And that's what will happen. Now, just a short note, I am not one of those thought people that believe in changing habits or personalities. I am not. What my system and belief is to recognize your strengths and magnify your strengths relative to your business, recognize your weaknesses, and then hire people to your weaknesses where their strengths are your weakness. That's the philosophy that I use. And I'm going to give you an opinion of each one of you tonight before we're finished. I'm going to interpret your personality. And I'm going to interpret what I see as the positive and negative, the good things on how you can use what you're naturally good at in your business that I suggest you do more of. But I'm also going to do the thing you don't like. I'm going to tell you all the things that I know about you because I teach this. You didn't have to tell me a whole lot about it. All I had to do is see you and look at you and interact with you. I'm going to share with you the things that I've learned that are negative. And you're not going to like it. So you're not going to like that part of this presentation tonight. And so what I'm going to suggest is first recognize what is highly inhibiting you back, what's inhibiting you, and then what can you put in place to help support what you're not good at, what you're naturally not good at. So that's a personality situation. Now, how does this rely? These are the characteristics. So what are the important characteristics? So when we look at a business owner, you'll have more than one Pike's personality. Part of your personality will have negatives. And here's the third thing. Your personality will change depending on your environment. Your personality could be very different at work than it is at home. And I'll give you an example of me. I'll use me as an example. That my personality is very different at work. It's 180 degrees the opposite at work than it is at home. My personality profile is very diametrically different. Now, when you look at statistics, generally the bulk, the 80% of people with these personalities are across the board. And generally, 80% of the people have what's called a primary and a secondary. That's above a 50th percentile. So when you take these profiles, you'll look at above the 50th percentile. And what you'll have is called a primary and a secondary. That's what you'll look at. Most people have a primary. Very few people in a work relationship or at home have one really, really strong personality that's overwhelmingly dominant. Now, also, it's a very, very small personality profile that has personalities that are totally even across the board. In other words, they kind of have each personality profile kind of even across the board. That's a very low percentage too. And I'll share with you how this relates to you and your business and your chiropractic office. So the two personality profiles that I have seen is melancholy, choleric, melancholy, or the dominant personality or the cautious thinker. In other words, the person who wants to be in control, and the person who wants to be right, and who is very analytical and detailed. And so typically those people, because those are the natural characteristics, when you have those types of personalities, you will have the natural characteristics of the two major components of being a business owner. Now, whether you have the knowledge is a totally different story. But you'll have the natural ability to get new business and to get it and the repeat purchases, because it will take conviction and confrontation and comfort zone issues for you to do those things. And that's why those two categories are paramount when it comes to getting new business and retention. Now, it depends on what kind of position you're talking about, but we're talking about small business owners. How important is getting new business and retention to a small business owner? Well, it's paramount. Well, if that wasn't important, like say you worked for a company and you weren't responsible for getting new business, in other words, you just had to process business, but the details of what you processed were very important to your job. Well, now the melancholy or the cautious thinker personality becomes overwhelmingly important. The details of processing the work becomes very important. I'll give you another example. Let's say you work for a company that getting new business and retention, again, is not, You're not in that part of the business. That's not part of your job. But you need to process business. We need somebody who's very consistent, methodical, and that sticks to it, and that can process it from start to finish. That particular occupation, I want a phlegmatic personality, a phlegmatic personality. Those are the people that are very consistent and methodical. So I'm going to use that person's personality profile to optimize whatever work environment he's in. Now, Fortune 500 companies will do this. They will profile personalities because they'll see where there's natural inclinations. They'll see maybe, I'll give you another example, is maybe a sanguine personality or the interrelator. That person is the life of the party. It's the happy, chappy cat. So that's the person that you could say, well, that might be important in sales, right? Well, what if your job, it was important for you to be around people in social functions? You think that might be an important part of who you hire? To be around people, that they're naturally good and like being around people? How well is somebody going to thrive if part of their job is being around people, the socialization part of their job, and they're an introvert and they don't like being around people? They naturally will not thrive. And by the way, the natural dynamics called market forces weeds people out. All of you have been weeded out. You've had jobs that you liked more than others. You didn't maybe know why. Maybe you gravitated toward one more because it accentuated your natural proclivity and your natural value systems, beliefs, and your personality. Or maybe it was just the opposite. It was totally against your personality and you didn't like it. You just didn't like doing that job and it wasn't fun and you didn't thrive in it. Matter of fact, you tried to get the heck out of it and go do something else. So these are very important characteristics, A, for you individually to understand so you can do what when it comes to your business. So you can take your personality profile, apply it to the 4 categories of business, and maximize what you can control or what you're naturally going to be good at, number 1. Number 2, hire to your weaknesses. So if you're not very detail-oriented, you're going to want to hire a highly detail-oriented person, especially when it comes to your insurance billing. If you hire somebody who's just really not detail-oriented, like let's say you hire a high sanguine, who's not detail-oriented at all, they're like everywhere, and you try to put that person into a cubbyhole where there's no other people or very little people, and then you try to have them organized with detailed numbers, it will never work. It will be a mess. You're putting the wrong person's natural tendencies in the wrong position. And you'll never see it. You'll just see it doesn't work. So your personality profile is important for you. It's important for your staff members. And then it's important to your patients. Why is it important to your patients? Well, how do I want to talk to a dominant personality? A dominant personality can make decisions like this. So guess what happens if you're real slow with your information? Real quickly, they throw you aside. How are you going to interact with a melancholy person? When I'm going to do my patient education with my melancholy patient, do I need to be more detailed and specific with that person because they're a melancholy personality and they like high details? Yes, I'm going to modify my communication based on who the personality of the patient and how they want to be communicated to. What if it's a phlegmatic personality, a steady relator? Those are the people that are methodical and, they don't push their boundaries very much. They like security. Well, what if I've got that kind of person? How much repetition am I going to need to create security with that person? And am I probably going to make sure that I have their significant other there? Because is that the kind of person that can make a decision? No, they can't. So they're not good at decision making, and they're certainly not good at it quickly, and typically their partner is. So if I have a phlegmatic personality on day 1 and I'm going to do a report of findings, do I know that I have to be slow, consistent, methodical, and repeat, and I have to make sure that their significant other is there when I give any treatment recommendations that involve time or money? Is that important to know? Will it help me in my communication? Yes, it will. It will help me significantly. If you don't know this and you don't do this, who will you attract? You will only attract the opposites. In other words, you only attract 2 out of the 4. You'll only naturally attract 2 out of the 4 characteristics. That's it. Naturally. So if you're dominant, then you'll naturally get along with the phlegmatic because your strength is their weakness. By the way, you will typically marry your opposite. Your spouse, your partner in life will typically be your opposite. You can look at yourself, and I can tell you right here, it exists. It exists with this group of people right here. So, because your strengths are their weaknesses and their strengths are your weaknesses. And so there's a synergism there, as opposed to butting heads of 2 people wanting to be in control, or 2 people who can't make a decision, 2 phlegmatics. That it naturally won't work, and it doesn't work. So understanding these factors is vital in life. It's important for you. It's important in your small business, your chiropractic business. It's important for your staff. The worst thing you could do is take an introvert phlegmatic and make them your marketing assistant. It's going to fail. It's going to fail. It certainly won't thrive unless they're in survival, and that only lasts a short time until they're out of survival, and that's it. So this is how it applies to the different positions in your office, whether it's your front desk girl. So am I going to want a sanguine, a choleric melancholy type of person in the front desk with some sanguine? Yes. They have to be interactive. They have to be friendly. And yet they have to be able to control, because they're the quarterback. They're dealing with time and money. They are the quarterback of that office. So I cannot have a passive phlegmatic in that front office trying to go after patient visits or money. I'm setting it up for failure. Obviously, training is an important part of this, but you can't do training. Training only takes you so far. If you don't have the natural tendencies, it doesn't really matter how much you train. There's not the desire and there's not good training. So this is why a lot of times occupations with employees don't work out. The staff is typically picked wrong for the wrong job, and they're not trained well. And then the doctor doesn't lead them to a higher level about conviction and duty, and they stay about the money, and they wonder why there's constant turnover in their office. That's the formula for constant turnover. By the way, if you do the opposite, that's when you have high-performing employees that stay for a long time. My first employee was 16 years. My second employee was 5 years, left, worked for IBM, and then came back and worked for another 7 years. That's what keeps people in consistency moving along. So these are some of the important factors with running your business when it comes to motivation and natural tendencies and proclivities. One was personality. Personality.